Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me on an episode. And this is our new, did you like our new here's the thing. We have a new song, a new intro, a new theme song, and I hope you all enjoyed it. It was so fun to put together, and this is our inaugural episode. I'm trying some new software, so I'm all excited about how this is actually going to turn out. And so if you are watching live, please let me know you're here so I can do a shout out and say, hey, it is Historic Marker Monday, and I am so glad that you are here joining me. And today it's all about sponging in Key West. I know we talk a lot about how Key West has evolved and changed, and how, as it has, it has its ups and its downs, and its ebbs and its flows, and it's done some amazing things. And what I find very interesting is each time Key West did something that was amazing, we were able to figure out then, this is something that worked or didn't work or lasted or didn't last. And Mr. Coffee is here to say hello, and I hope you say hello back to him. We will see if he'll come up and join us. But I thought we'd dive right into this. So we're not literally. We are diving, though, into this history of sponging in Key West. And this was a really unexpected industry. It wasn't something that started because people were extremely interested in sponging. It almost happened by accident. And so let's get into it. As we start looking through a lot of the things that happened back in the 1820s, fishermen started to notice after a storm, these live sponges would wash ashore. And they got to thinking, these are really useful. And initially, they were just used domestically, locally. They were for cleaning and medical stuff, and maybe a little bit of other things that they were used for. Basically, what you use sponging for today. And Tim is saying hello. Hope all is well, and it is. I'm so glad that you are checking in with us. So. As they started to figure out that they had these uses for these sponges and they started to wash up on shore, somebody got the bright idea, but you know what? I bet you there are more of these offshore that we can go check out. And what happened was they went and discovered that there was a bunch more, and they live in about 20 feet of water around Key West. And what's interesting is these are plants. I'm sorry, these aren't plants, these are animals. So it's like coral, but they're sponges. So they're live and they live in the waters. And they absolutely flourished around the waters in Key West because it was warm and sheltered, and they just absolutely thrived in those shallow waters. And so what happened was these fishermen decided, you know what, I think we can go harvest these sponges. And the fishermen used a thing called a hook boat. It's a small workboat so that they could then navigate around those shallow waters in Key West. And they're modest vessels. They're nothing major. They're nothing fabulous or fancy. But it just gave them the ability to go in and navigate the shallow waters. And to harvest the sponges, because they were only in about 20 feet of water, they used a really long pole that had 3 or 4 prongs at the end of it. Think of it as like I kind of look at it like a thing that you would use in your garden, kind of like that. And so those were hooks, that long poles, and the fishermen were called hookers. Believe it or not, they actually were. They were called hookers. And they would approach the sponge, they would rake it up with this hose or with this pole, and they would bring it up onto the boat. So it's early morning, they're out on the water, they're out exploring, they're finding these sponges, they're bringing them in. And then you brought them to shore, and they would have to dry out, and they began to harvest a lot of these sponges. And back in 1849, the first commercial shipment of sponges was sent from Key West to New York. And I'll tell you what, the people in New York loved them. They loved the quality of them. They loved how they were soft and the variety, and instantly these sponges caught on. So fast forward to about 1890, and Key West literally has the monopoly on the U.S. sponge trade. And we're talking at that time, 1,200 men approximately were working in the sponging world, and they worked about 350 hook boats, and they were hauling in about 2,000 tons of sponges each year. And that generated about $750,000 a year in revenue for Key West. And in about 1890 money, translated today, that's about $26 million. That's a huge economic impact on Key West. Well, then enter 1904, and the Greek divers come to Key West. And they come to Key West with all that heavy equipment that you see. You know, the big helmets and the heavy boots. And the fishermen of Key West were not impressed by this. They did not think that this is something that they wanted in their waters or in their sponge beds. And you know what? They were right. So they had these heavy lead boots and these air hoses, and it actually started to damage the sponge beds because of all of the weight and everything that was coming on board or being walked. All the sponges beds were being walked on. And so you started to have a decline of the sponge industry, and it was overfished. You know, the beds, just couldn't regenerate themselves. They were being harvested way too fast and way too hard, and they just couldn't keep up. And there was environmental damage. All those heavy boots walking on the beds crushed those young sponges, and they just weren't able to grow. And then, unfortunately, a deadly sponge fungus came in and wiped out a bunch of the sponging or the sponges. So, with the decline of the sponge market in Key West, that basically ended what was done in sponging for the island. However, the Greek divers then moved up to Tarpon Springs, and if you've been to Tarpon Springs in Florida, it is the sponging capital of of the world, is what they had touted themselves. By 1920, they had become the sponging capital of the world. And if you walk around Tarpon Springs today, you're going to see a lot of that still there. But what was interesting, and I'm hoping I can share this, there is a movie that was done in 1953. Let me see if I can switch over here and do this. So it's called Beneath the 12-Mile Reef. And as this is coming on, what's really interesting is this was one of the first movies that was filmed in CinemaScope. I mean, we're talking old school about this. And it has stars a very, very young Robert Wagner. And it was filmed in Key West. And it talks a lot, or tries to convey a lot of what was happening around the waters of Key West. So it was filmed in the waters around Key West. It's in CinemaScope, and it's just, you can see there that I'm playing, for those of you who are on the podcast and cannot see this, I am playing the trailer. So this is what you can see how the Greek divers would have been dressed during this time. They're wearing all the heavy things, whereas the Key West fishermen were doing it from the waters above and not actually walking down on the sponge beds. And so I find that interesting. There's a lot of drama and everything. It's a 1950s, 53 movie, and there's, of course, Robert Wagner, and there's a killer tiger shark, and there's a fight under the water, and there's romance. And, if you're into old Hollywood movies, absolutely check it out because it's got a Key West connection, right? So what does this have to do with Key West today? You're going to see a lot of modern connections back to the sponging industry in Key West. It absolutely had an impact on Key West. They were able to generate revenue and create an economy out of that. It shaped the maritime culture of Key West. And many of the boat building traditions and the fishing traditions stem from what they learned from sponging. Don't overfish, be cognizant of the ecosystem, be kind and gentle to the waters, all of that. And if you walk around Key West, you're going to see that the sponging world still has an impact or some sort of influence on Key West. There are stores that carry natural sponges. You can see those in the gift shop. So it's a nod back to the sponging era of Key West. Again, I think Key West and all of us have learned about over harvesting and being having an impact on the ecology and the waters around Key West. And what's really interesting, if you get a chance, head over to Truman Annex and you can see the Florida Keys ecosystem, and you can go in there, and it's a building where you can check out everything that's happening in the Florida Keys and the waters around the Key West, and it's free to go in. And in the summertime, it's great because it's air conditioned. So be sure to check that out. As you're strolling through Key West, you're also going to see places that nod back to the sponging industry. Mallory Square obviously was a integral part of the sponging industry back then. Of course, the historic seaport always has that connection. What's interesting is right now, if you go to the corner of Green Street and Elizabeth Street, there is a building there. It's the Thompson O'Neill Fish House. That building was actually built, I think, in 1948. But back when sponging was at its peak in Key West, this is where the sponge docks were. And so you can kind of close your eyes and imagine what that looked like. And there's many people today in Key West who can trace their families back to being sponging, hookers and being out on those boats and being in part of that industry. And so there's a lot of families who can connect themselves back then. That is just a little bit of the history of sponging in Key West. Obviously, there's so much more. And I just always like to pop in on Mondays and give you an update or an insight of the story behind those historic markers. As you're wandering through Key West, you're going to see a bunch of those. There's over 120 of these historic markers throughout Key West, and each one tells either a story of a person, the story of a building, or a story of an era like this, the sponging era of Key West and the impact that it had on Key West. And so I encourage you to check those out. You can learn a lot more about the historic markers if you head over to FunInKeyWest.com, because over there, for sure, you're going to see all of those historic markers. It's a self-guided walking tour. So as you pop in and see those, you'll be able to check those out. As well as sign up, grab our happy hour list. It's going to pop up as you look through the website. And that gets you in on our newsletter, keeps you up to date on what's happening with Fun in Key West, as well as what's happening in Key West. And of course, sign up for our book club. We are having a blast over there. As always, I appreciate you stopping by and checking out our new system. Let me know what you think. Do you like our theme song? Do you like the new way it's done? Let me know. Always trying to do something new and different and try to convey a lot more information to you on where to eat, what to do, and absolutely why Key West is the best place to be. With that, thank you so much for joining me. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later. And let's listen to our new theme song out as we go.